It's time for today's face-off on Fox Soul. Challengers Quan LX and Big Angry Adams, ready to go blow by blow on those hot topics. Face-off on Fox Soul starts right now.
Right, because there has to be some attention.
The difference between free speech and hate speech, and we know that. Free speech, I welcome. I think everyone welcomes. It's your constitutional right. When you start delving into hate speech, which is what is happening all over social media, there's a problem with that. When you start delving into misinformation and disinformation, there's a problem with that. Meta's new hate speech guidelines permit users to call people in the LGBTQ plus community mentally ill. That is harmful. That is harmful. And the last thing I'll say is, let's just break it down to bare bones. This is about President-elect Trump going back to the White House. Mark Zuckerberg and Meta dined with Trump at Mar-a-Lago in November. Meta just donated $1 million to support his inauguration. Zuckerberg also elevated Joel Kaplan, the highest-ranking Meta executive closest to the Republican Party, to the company's most senior policy role. And on Monday, Zuckerberg said Dana White, the head of the Ultimate Fighting Championship and an ally of Trump's, would join Meta's board. This is about the fact that our many corporations, and especially these oligarchs that own these social media companies, are bowing down to Trump so that they can make money off of the American people.
Okay, we will have a bit of a conversation here.
In this round, here's Charles Big Angry Adams.
Now, as a predicate to this clip of The View, where we heard Sunny Hostin make her impassioned plea to restrict speech in these United States in a way that would undermine and offend the free speech clause of the First Amendment, is downstream from Mark Zuckerberg making his conservative pilgrimage to the Joe Rogan podcast, where he described how members of the Biden administration would call Facebook and yell and scream to get posts that the government didn't like taken off the social media site, which is horrifying if you're concerned with individual liberty. We all witnessed the tampering in the 2020 election, and most people have memory hold it, where people were thrown off Facebook, where accounts were shut down on Twitter. All-out effort to protect the Biden candidacy by lying to America about the validity of the information on the laptop that Hunter Biden left at the Apple repair store. Now we found out it's all true, that there was this incredibly elaborate scheme of shell companies and a network in funneling money to Joe and other members of the Biden family. We're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars that Hunter took and never paid a dime of taxes on. And of course, we had a soon-to-be former President Biden that loved to pound his fist and say no one's above the law when he talked about Donald Trump. But of course, none of that, this unprecedented pardon for his son. And now Sunny Hostin, well, she doesn't want us to be allowed to talk about it. She's, it's hate speech, misinformation, and disinformation. If you don't protect the worst speech, you're not protecting any speech. And that doesn't mean the citizens are ratifying that speech, but they're allowed to hear it. The only speech that should be illegal is conspiring to commit a crime, conspiring to engage in treason, conspiring to commit violence, or actively threatening violence. Those fall outside of the penumbra of protection that our free speech clause gives us. And what the Biden administration did, and what she is advocating for, is the government bullying private businesses into restricting speech, and it's horrifying, and there should be some accountability. There won't be, but there should be, and she should lose her job in the press talking about she don't want free speech.
If Sister Sunny, who was an intelligent sister on The View, if she has her way, that this speech should be policed, sanctioned, and controlled, then I would say to her, sister, if that's the case, you would never be on The View. Because if Dr. King's speech could have been controlled and sanctioned, if Minister Malcolm X's speech could have been controlled and sanctioned, if members of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense did not have the right to speak up. Frederick Douglass could not say what he wanted to say. Carter G. Woodson. Well, I'm sorry, all of those heroes and sheroes, Sister Sonny, paved the way for her to be on The View. What she should have spoke about was that the Biden administration not only was making harassing phone calls to Mark Zuckerberg, he said they were threatening him and using profanity in the process. That's not only intimidating, that's threatening and using the highest office in the land to blackmail a private businessman or woman. Look, you may not like what I say, and you don't a lot. I may disagree with what you got to say, but that's why we live in America. We have a right to say it. Now, we can be challenged on what we say. We can be held accountable by those who want to challenge what we say they disagree with. But everybody should enjoy the right of the constitutional protection of freedom of speech. So these platforms, I'm concerned about them too, because some of these platforms push absolute filth, lies, and BS. But guess what? That's the America we live in. You got a right to say it. She's wrong for her position, and I'm concerned that what else did they do that Mr. Zuckerberg is not even talking about right now? Because he hinted in that interview with Mr. Rogan that he's not even telling everything that they did. Then he went on to say some things indirectly about the FBI and what they did to his company if he was not willing to play ball.
No, we have built, since, I would say since the Patriot Act and the Bush administration and then the Obama administration caused it to explode, we have built this incredible surveillance network that has transitioned from trying to protect us from acts of terror, and should be to protect us from crime, from a new paradigm where law enforcement only gets involved in the most heinous of crimes or high-profile crimes, right? If it gets news attention, if you're a celebrity, they might try to solve your burglary, but if not, you just got to suffer. So they're not using it for the public good, they're using it for the public oppression, where we've seen people, FBI agents, show up on people's doors, knock on their front door, and try to bully people into talking to them about political posts. Now, it's far better here than the United Kingdom, where people are going to prison in the UK for Facebook posts that other people are offended by.
That's right.
Which is insane.
But what if Mr. Zuckerberg had come out and said that the Trump administration did this to him when Trump was in office the first time?
The media would have lost their mind.
She would have even felt like that.
She would have
She'd
lost
had a
her
whole
mind.
different conversation. And that's the problem in America. We got to get away from politics and party lines that are not in the best interest of the American people. Freedom, justice, and equality and constitutional rights should trump no matter what party that you're a part of.
Well, an invalid criticism. This was just Sonny mad because a politician she supports, Biden, got criticized by someone, right? And they're so, especially on the left, they're very used to CEOs and pretty much almost everybody in the media bending the knee to the left's narratives. And Zuckerberg, who I find to be, he's an obscenely wealthy, powerful man who, probably manipulates outcomes for himself as well. But she's mad because he's speaking the truth. You saw, and it's not just the Democrats. Like, when I criticized Cruz and Biden for not being in Texas when Texas needed them, I got one group of people on Twitter calling me all kind of names. When I started criticizing Karen Bass for not returning them from Ghana, I got a whole nother group of Twitter calling me names, where if you flip the parties, everyone being belligerent would feel differently. Because instead of supporting right and wrong or criticizing politicians for doing wrong, they're just playing the lemmings, the stance for their party.
I'll give you a better example. If I point out the wrong of a white person, and they can be dead wrong, I'm called racist. But I can take a black person, let me finish, I can take a black person who has done the same exact act and criticize and condemn them, but I'm not called anti-black. So really what you're saying is true also along racial lines,
Well,
along political and racial
Hold on.
lines. If the person doesn't
Hold
look
on.
like you, they can't criticize
Hold
you.
on.
If the person to be a member of your political affiliated party, well then you against them no matter how true it is that they're saying.
Okay, but let's draw a little line here. If a white man criticizes a black man for doing something wrong, that's perfectly valid. If a white man criticizes all black men because one black man did something wrong, that's racism, right? So if you say, oh, this guy committed a murder, oh, well, that's just how black men are, that's somebody being a racist, not you. What you regularly do, what'd you call me on the commercial break? I was told I was not Nubian, I was a colonizer, so I couldn't participate in a conversation. What you do is you'll take one situation that an individual white person does, and then you apply it to all white people. That's you being a racist.
I think you're wrong.
That's not the same scenario.
What I'm saying
when you
is
call a white woman Becky and
this
Karen,
is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying.
Flat.
When
what is
if
it,
a
flat?
white
Like
man,
what?
if a white man,
what a white butt's flat
if
like?
a white iron board backside.
Iron board backside.
Just miss flat in the back. But anyway, as I was saying, Charles.
Give me your favorite white racial pejorative.
But if a white man came out and said that black men must do a better job in staying in the home with their children, in particular their sons who desperately need them, and if that happened, I believe the crime rate would go down. If a white man said that, a lot of white people would call him a racist, and a lot of black folk would call him a racist and be angry with him. But guess what? What he would have said would be the truth. And that's the problem, even with black people. If we say to white people, listen, you're not responsible for the crimes of your ancestors.
No, they're not.
And those who committed crimes generations before you.
Just like you're not responsible.
But you financially, as a collective whole, as a people, inherited some great financial benefits that need to be dealt with justly when it comes to black people who work for free.
And the problem with that
now, that's not racism. That's true. When you see that Wells Fargo financed slave ships, when you see that Bank of America also financed slave plantations and financed slaves, they financially benefited from slavery. So why would not they be a part of the healing process of reparations?
Okay, but I have never owned Wells Fargo. I have never owned Bank of America.
I'm using that as an example.
I didn't own anything until I started working for a job and buying it myself.
But I can go further than that.
No, let me go further, okay? Because you had your little chance to spew your nonsense, right? So there's a difference in America in per capita income, right? And per capita wealth, right? There are more white people with wealth, although the group with the most wealth by race, if you break it down, are Asian people, and they're largely first and second generation or immigrants, right? And you want to say they were put in internment camps. There are more white people in aggregate that live in poverty that have never benefited from anything, although you would argue they were born with some privilege, and you discount the horrors of their reality. And whenever you take people and you
rob them
of the
white
individual,
nor Asian, suffered the economic crimes that black people suffered in America for over 400 years.
I don't disagree that there was horrible treatment of black
Americans. So you can't compare the two.
But hold on. But you didn't suffer that, right?
Oh, that's where you're wrong.
But I know you can articulate.
I can break that down, too.
There was no one that ever told you that you couldn't go to school or have a job. In fact,
my great-grandmother was a slave.
The affirmative action
right here in Texas
has been the norm.
My great-grandmother was a slave right here in Texas.
For 5 decades.
My great-grandfather, Jim Clark, he also was a slave right here in Texas. So I can show you a direct connection.
So at what point in your world, okay, let's say everybody gets a check, every black person gets a check. Then what happens next?
We need land.
Okay.
Wait, don't go in the house yet.
Why not?
Hey, listen. Go on to just go sit on the porch. Hey, listen. What do you think you're doing?
I'm dropping them off. It's good. Listen, I met a younger guy. He don't want no kids. And he don't want to, listen, he don't want to deal with them. And so I'm dropping these kids off so me and him can live our life. We want to travel. We want to explore the world. And I can't do that with kids. I can't.
I cannot believe.
It's time for me to be happy, and I just want to be happy and stress-free without these children. That's all I want.
Then you should ask me, baby.
I shouldn't have to ask. You're the grandparent.
It's respect, Angel. It's respect.
Well, I hope that you respect my decision on moving on with my life with my new man and no kids.
I'm not raising your kids.
Well, I'm not either.
Well, I don't know what to tell you because I'm not doing it. I'm just letting you know right now I'm not doing it.
In this round, here's Quanell X.
Charles, that was a shocking and heartbreaking video to watch, because that has happened more in America than a lot of people think. To watch that video of that young woman who decided she no longer wanted the children she gave birth to because she found a new boyfriend, and that new boyfriend don't want a woman with children. Charles, let me say this, and I'll get to the personal experience part of this in a second, but there are women in this country that have given up their kids because the new man did not want a woman with children, and they have abandoned those children with friends, even abandoned them to even by themselves in apartments to fend for themselves while they go away with the new man. We just heard about a case like that right here in Houston a few years back, where the woman abandoned her children for a new man and left and moved out of town with him. Charles, my mother, may Allah rest her soul in peace. My mother did the same thing to my grandmother. She took us to my grandmother's. We came from California to Houston. And she told my grandmother, she said, I'm going to the store. I'll be back, Mama. We didn't see her again for 9 months. And when she came back, we were so happy to see her. We had so many things we wanted to talk to her about. She spent the night. The next morning, Charles, she was gone. And then I realized not only was she gone, the little money I had made working at the grocery store, sacking groceries at Watkins, and the money I made selling wrestling programs at the Sam Houston Coliseum at wrestling matches, she had stole that money out of my pocket and left, and we didn't see her again for almost a year. Thank God for grandmothers like the grandmother in this video, and my grandmother, Miss Beulah White Clark. May God rest her soul in heaven. Because grandmothers, many of them, have had to step up and be mamas even when the child they didn't give birth to is their grandchildren. But this is happening more than a lot of people want to talk about. Any man that will take a woman that's willing to throw her kids away to be with you, you a damn fool. You ain't no man. Any woman that's got a man that's telling her, I'll take you, but I won't take your children, you get the hell away from that man. But it's sad, Charles, because remember Susan Smith did the same thing. She met a new man after her divorce, and the boyfriend didn't have any children, and she had two little boys. She drove them babies in a lake and drowned them to death, right, and lied and say somebody carjacked her because she wanted to be with her boyfriend who didn't want children.
She blamed black men, right?
Blamed the black man, yes, to carjacked her.
Fictitious black man. I will say, I think this happens more than people want to imagine, but I don't think we should focus all our criticism just on women. In this scenario, there was a man at some point that created these children that she was dropping off and abandoning. And there was a man that probably should have, that she apparently saw as not willing to accept that responsibility, so she used her mom. That doesn't absolve her of the culpability for her horrible behavior, but there was a man out there, and we have tons of men who will create children and then move on to the next relationship and forget all about them. You know, and very similar, after my parents' divorce, I lived with my grandparents for a while, just I think about a year. And in my father's circumstance, he was having at UTMB given blood transfusions to my aunt because she was dying of something called aplastic anemia that required long daily transfusions. But you know, would I have had a better life growing up with my father's parents? Had money. They were very nice, very caring. They lived in the country club down in Corpus. You know, when I moved back in with my mom maybe a year later, and who knows why I was with them and not with her. I was too young to know. I was like 5, 6 years old. And I think I went to 5 elementary schools total, right? That sort of movement around is not something that a kid should endure. So, I mean, the question is would it possibly be better to have been with a grandparent? I don't know, right? I love my mom, I love my dad.
It was the best thing
but
for me and my brothers.
But when you have kids very young, when you don't have financial stability, when you have not matured to the point of parenting kids, But for this woman to just openly, with no shame, express to her mother how she needs time for her. It's this selfish, narcissistic culture that we have promoted, where we have people believing that they're just entitled to success, they're just entitled to wealth, they're just entitled to happiness. And the truth is that usually when you're chasing things without building a foundation upon which you earn them, you're just running headfirst into your own ruin, right? Destroying the relationships. We have so many people.
But that grandmother was so gentle.
Oh, she was obviously
She
an
was so
amazing
gentle.
woman.
And did you hear she told her children, y'all go up on the porch? Because she didn't want them to hear the conversation of their mother saying, I don't want them anymore. I don't want them. You can have them. She was concerned about the fragile ears of those babies.
It's horrible.
And Charles, I'm going to tell you, I give the mother credit for one thing, though. And I thank her for this. One thing. That she didn't do something stupid and reckless to get rid of those kids so she could go be with another man. But I would not be shocked that those are multiple children from multiple different daddies.
Well, I think you're making an
I
assumption
wouldn't be
there.
shocked at all,
But then
Charles.
the question is, why were all of those dads not willing to step up and take their kids?
That's
what's wrong with
that's
people?
a serious question. But also, I believe that young woman needs some intense mental health therapy and counseling, because obviously she's mentally just totally broke down.
Well, I think she's just a narcissist.
Detached from reality, period.
She thinks that her feelings are more important than her duties as a parent.
Who else did this that you remember?
I mean, you had
high-profile case.
Hunter Biden did it.
Remember Lacey Peterson?
Yeah.
Remember that case?
I mean, you have a number of examples of where parents have murdered children to escape the obligation of children, and
To
that's
be with a
very
new
far
man.
worse. But any parent that has a child and ignores that child's existence is a human stain.
That's it for the Face Off on Fox Soul. We'll catch you next time.